All right, welcome back to the channel. So it sounds like Yordenis Ugas is getting a little bit cocky in his championship and pretty much tells Manny Pacquiao, look, if you want that rematch, be careful because I'm going to beat you worse the next time. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Yordenis Ugas, as we know, beat Manny Pacquiao in the fight that took place the weekend before last, where he replaced Errol Spence Jr. in, to fight Yordenis Ugas after to fight Manny Pacquiao after Yordenis Ugas, after Errol Spence Jr., muddle mouth today, after Errol Spence Jr. Tore a retina and had to replace him. Well, in the lead up to the fight, the replacement fight, Yordenis Ugas was being very, very respectful, very, very, humble. And, I did leave a little bit of that up to, his interpreters and thinking maybe, the interpreters are just being really, overly nice for Yordenis Ugas, because it would seem like Yordenis Ugas with his fighting style might actually have a little bit more, a little bit more ruggedness in him, than what was being said. So it seems though that Yordenis Ugas is starting to come into his own a little bit and telling Manny Pacquiao essentially the truth, which is, look, you can have this rematch if you want, but if you do, understand you are going to get beat worse the second time than you did than you got beat the first time. And man, I'm gonna tell you, I think that is spot on, estimation by Yordenis Ugas, because everything pretty much, focuses, points to this being, a really bad ending to Manny Pacquiao's career. It's bad. It's, bad enough that Manny Pacquiao, was going to fight Errol Spence Jr. and thought that he saw something in Errol Spence Jr. that was going to allow him to get over against Errol Spence Jr. But when you lose to a guy that I think is maybe the third or the fourth best 147 pounder, then that's telling you, man, that you really, really starting to slip. And I don't care what anybody says, going into that fight with Yordenis Ugas, Manny Pacquiao had a whole lot of confidence behind him and a whole lot of arrogance behind him in his camp going into that fight. And then, they got humbled, and they got humbled big time, and not just by, by some close fight like people like Teddy Atlas are trying to say. Like Teddy Atlas, if you haven't heard his pet podcast, is one of these guys that are feeding Manny Pacquiao a bunch of hot air by telling him that, look, that was a close fight. He did excellently in that fight. Look, man, no, he didn't. He absolutely he got mopped is what he did. And he really got mopped by a guy that I don't think really went at and pressed the gas like he could have against Manny Pacquiao, because Manny Pacquiao, because he was still respecting everything that Manny Pacquiao brought to the ring. But Yordenis Ugas this time around is saying, look, man, if it's going to be even easier for me to beat you the second time, so be careful what you ask for. And that only makes sense because, look, the older you get, and I know that I harped on this through the entire first fight, the first fight with them, and actually I was harping on it with Manny Pacquiao and Keith Thurman, saying, look, I didn't actually place a bet, but I put, my vote behind Keith Thurman to beat Manny Pacquiao, because I was like, look, I think it was at 40 at the time, I thought he was too old. Now he slipped out of there with that Keith Thurman fight. And I think he slipped out of there by the hair of his chinny chin because of that knockout and what he did in the early rounds, right? Getting to a lead on Keith Thurman. But as that fight went on, Keith Thurman was really landing very firm right hands straight to the face of Manny Pacquiao, and which showed the beginning of his decline. Now, the second fight, or the fight with Yordenis Ugas, really was just, an amplified version of the latter half of the Keith Thurman fight, where he was really pressing him. Manny Pacquiao couldn't get out of the way of punches. He couldn't hop in, hop out, jump to the left, jump to the right. Those options just weren't there for him because his age was because of his advanced age. Now going into the third fight though, you're going to have a guy, Yordenis Ugas, who's even more emboldened in knowing exactly what Manny Pacquiao can and can't do, knowing that he's got all of the options checked for Manny Pacquiao, because Manny Pacquiao, pretty much everything that he was doing, Yordenis Ugas saw coming, had a response ready for it, and those responses usually ended with a flurry of punches to Manny Pacquiao. So going into it, I would predict that Manny Pacquiao is probably going to get really beat up, if not stopped on the stool, against Yordenis Ugas, man. And there's another thing: if Manny Pacquiao wasn't protected by that ref in the fight against Yordenis Ugas, Manny Pacquiao might have got knocked out the first fight, because Yordenis Ugas, in large part, had to abandon his body attack or be very selective with his body attack, because the referee was so sensitive to Yordenis Ugas landing those shots. So if he is a little bit more precise on his body shots, and he's able to wear down Manny Pacquiao over the course of some rounds, like I do believe Errol Spence Jr. would have done, I think that you're going to get a situation where Manny Pacquiao really, is going to get debilitated in that ring and get, to the point where there's nothing he can do except for take punches. And that's not the way that you want to really see a Hall of Fame fighter like Manny Pacquiao go out. Now, everything that I've said about Manny Pacquiao really is only applying to Manny Pacquiao since he's turned 38, 39 years old. I'm not somebody that is, one of these guys that are out there really just saying that I don't think Manny Pacquiao is what is in his career what he was cracked up to be. Right now, I have always maintained that you can't put him above Floyd Mayweather Jr., and because of the obviousness of the fact that Floyd Mayweather Jr. beat him and Floyd Mayweather Jr. beat people that beat him, they fought at the same time. And if you just look at how the two fighters fight, you just know that Floyd Mayweather Jr. is the more complete fighter. But I do give Manny Pacquiao full credit for being the very entertaining fighter who's always, by the way, and this is to his credit, is always willing to run back rematches. And he did the rematch with Eric Morales after he lost. He did the rematch with Tim Bradley after he lost. And then after he got it, he gave another rematch to Tim Bradley. And he gave rematches to Juan Manuel Marquez. I think he did 4 of those fights, because people always thought that, whenever they thought the fight was in doubt, Manny Pacquiao gave him the rematch. That is a very, those are commendable qualities out of Manny Pacquiao. But those, in my opinion, are not qualities that he needs to exercise here with Yordenis Ugas, because Yordenis Ugas is telling him the truth. Yordenis Ugas is going to mess around and hurt that guy, and hurt him in a way where he's going to have to deal with it after his career is over. You don't want to see Manny Pacquiao go the way of like a Roy Jones Jr. and wind up getting, having a career of getting knocked out, because, the best of him is gone, right? Or worse than that, have a situation where, he's like one of these fighters that, have a hard time talking and all of that, because you don't appreciate really how much punishment, the guy has taken during his career. Because I'm telling you, I think Manny Pacquiao has taken a fair amount of punishment over the last few years, and those things might be adding up. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.